Sam, you got a mic? Sam, raise your hand. And Sam, Phil, raise your hand. Phil, why don't you go to that side if you could? What we'd like to do is just take a few questions about one, but I did want to take some questions. Phil, this side, your side.
Support our unions.
You got it. We're looking at a member of the United States Senate who has the strongest pro-union voting record of any member of Congress.
Senator, my name is Ellen. I know from the Hampshire Rebellion, which you and many people corrupting influence of money out of our election system. We want to thank you so much for being the strongest candidate on that. And my question is, because this is the issue that touches every other issue, it's almost impossible, if not possible, to get things done without dealing with this. Will this be the first thing that you take care of or try to take care of when you get into office?
Citizens United?
Yes.
It is, yes. Well, I mean, I want to say it's going to be a very busy first day. And I want to congratulate. See, campaign finance is not exactly a sexy issue, right? People, no, I mean this seriously. People, this is more of a process issue. People gravitate to healthcare, they gravitate to environment, they gravitate to women's rights, to gay rights. But at the end of the day, what this woman said is exactly right. This issue of campaign finance touches every other issue. Okay? So what we will do, trust me, is have a very explicit program. It will be at the top of the agenda. I will do everything that I can to make sure that billionaires do not buy the United States government.
I think you partially answered this from the last question, but
Hold on, Mike, a little bit closer.
I'm very concerned about Monsanto's influence on our politics and the bill before the Senate right now to prevent us knowing if foods are.
Right. Good question. I'll tell you a story. And when you talk about money and corporate influence over politics, among many other institutions, we're talking about Monsanto. I'll tell you a story, just an interesting story. Maybe as long ago as 10 years ago, I was invited to go on CBS to talk about BGH, bovine growth hormone. I opposed Vermont, as you know, as a dairy state, and I opposed using these growth hormones in cows for a number of reasons. And I was invited to go on to CBS to talk about it. Then we got a call, and CBS said, well, we are not inviting you anymore, and we found out that Monsanto threatened to sue CBS. Right. And CBS is not a little mom-and-pop operation. All right. Now, as it happens, I know the legislation that you're talking about, and obviously we will do everything we can to defeat it. But I should tell you that several years ago, as part of the Farm Bill, I did exactly the opposite, as you may know. We brought forth an amendment onto the floor that guarantees states the right to move against growth hormones and GMOs. And I'm very proud to tell you, by the way, that the state of Vermont, you know, is the first state in the nation to do that. Sometimes I get criticized on this issue because people say there is no scientific evidence about the health impacts of GMOs. All I'm saying is that people have a right to know what they do.
Investigate all the fine, experienced teachers who are leaving the profession because the education system is going right down the drain.
Just met with the New Hampshire NEA this morning, and we talked about a lot of issues. And I'm happy to tell you, give you a little bit of good news on this. This disastrous legislation which I voted against, No Child Left Behind, is in fact going to be left behind. And this is ironically one of two bills where Democrats and Republicans came together. They hated for their own reasons. as much as some of us hate it, but we killed it in the Senate, and I hope we'll do the same in the House. Okay, Sam Araya? Where? Let's get over there. So let's move it.
I really appreciate you outlining strong steps for the federal government on racial justice. But as a civil rights organizer, as a white ally, what should white allies especially start doing tomorrow in terms of the political revolution?
I think we should, I mean, there are a lot of issues out there, I won't take off many of them. But I think we should be focusing on two broad issues. Number one, the absurdity of America leading the world in the number of people who are in jail, and the understanding that we have a very disproportionate number of minorities in that jail. And by the way, President Obama did a very brave thing by walking into a federal penitentiary in Oklahoma to highlight just that very issue. We need a number of police reforms, and it's not just body cameras and so forth. But it is also issues of use of force. Again, being a cop is not an easy job, but I think force should be the last resort. Too often, it is almost the first resort.
Can I make a quick comment? Phil Ferrante with Bernie's campaign. What a great crowd. And I just wanted to give you, for those of you who want to get involved in this, as Bernie said, this is a people-powered campaign. We can win in New Hampshire, we can win in Iowa, but we can't do it without your help. So real quickly, a couple things that you can do. We'd love to have you, we need you to be involved. Right there on that sign, BernieSanders.com. Please go to our webpage. A lot of ways that you can sign up and get involved there. As Bernie said, we've got a lot of contributions, I think averaging about $35. You can make a contribution there. That would be enormously helpful. One of our staffers is here. Kurt Ehrenberg is right there. You can write to Kurt, email him at Kurt, K-U-R-T, at BernieSanders.com. And Kurt can get you involved. We're growing our staff in New Hampshire. We're going to have more staff workers going to be doing a lot of door knocking, a lot of grassroots work that you can all be involved in. For those of you who have cell phones, take your cell phone out right now and just send a text message to this number. And the number is 82623. 82623. And just put Bernie in your message. And that's a way that you can stay in touch with the campaign. We'll let you know when Bernie's coming back to New Hampshire, any events that are going on, any canvassing going on. It's a great way to stay in touch. So what is that number, everybody? 82623. Just send a text right now if you can to Bernie, to the campaign. All right, here we go.
Maybe one last question. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, I know you talked a lot about domestic policy, and I think that's great. I support a lot of the initiatives you support. And I'm just wondering about foreign policy. How can America aid struggling nations abroad, nations with ISIS and other terrorist organizations, and Israel who are struggling with all of these issues?
Good question. And the reason it's a very good question, I go on longer, I give longer speeches than anybody else in the world. And then people always say, well, they didn't ask that question. That's a very fair question. But the reason I know is I can't go on and not. I'm testing your patience already. I'm keeping you here as long as I do. But let me answer that very good question. Okay? I think the question is about Middle East and foreign policy and stuff like that. Okay. Here are the issues. Anyone who tells you they have an easy solution to the Middle East ain't telling you the truth. It is a terrible and painful and complicated issue. It is a tragedy. Tragedy. Let me just say this. When I was first elected, way back when, to the House in 1991, I took office, literally one of my first votes was whether or not the United States would go to war in the Gulf. You remember when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait? And President Bush, the first Bush, said, well, the only alternative is invasion, the only thing we can do. And despite a whole lot of people in my state and around the country saying, yeah, we should go to war, I voted against that war because I believe there was a 2003 came around, and And then we had another President Bush. They never end. I would say two is enough, don't you think? And the war, and as you know, you remember, we had the President, we had Vice President Cheney, we had Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld telling us they have weapons of mass destruction, and then they said, well, you know, this is just Iraq, Saddam Hussein, this will be pretty easy, we'll go in, we'll establish democracy, our troops will be home, it's just a minor effort. I didn't believe it. And if you go to not to my website, but if you go to YouTube and look under Sanders' war in Iraq, he had a speech that I gave on the floor of the House. And sadly, it's not anything I'm happy about. Much of what I predicted in terms of the destabilization that would take place, in fact, did take place. So I tell you those stories to tell you that as the former chair of the Senate Veterans Committee, I learned a lot about the cost of war. And I learned that war is a last resort, that we do everything that we can to prevent war. President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry, for example, have worked very hard on this agreement with Iran, and of course 6 other countries were involved. I haven't made a final decision, got to do a lot of briefings, but I applaud their effort to try to reach a solution, to get a nuclear weapon, to make sure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon without going to war. Okay? So I guess to answer your question, ISIS, let me say this a little further. We all know, we don't have to go into great length about the barbarity of this ISIS organization, unspeakable crimes in terms of what they committed. But here's what I believe. It cannot just be the United States of America that fights ISIS. Okay? It must be primarily the Muslim nations in that region, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Jordan, the other countries. Okay? Saudi Arabia, you may not notice, has the 3rd largest military budget in the world, far bigger than ISIS. All right? I think the United States and other major countries should be supportive of the effort. But I will do everything that I can to prevent the United States being involved in perpetual warfare. Turnout, and your presence here and the turnouts we've been seeing all over New Hampshire tells me that the people of New Hampshire are prepared to discuss serious issues in a serious way and are prepared to stand up and take on big money interests. I thank you all very much.